It's a little after 9 a.m. in the morning. This is the Energy and Environment Committee, and we have 4 items on the agenda. And before we get into the agenda, I'd like to know if there are any continuances or consent items.
Yes, Madam Chair, you have one continuance item, item number 3. That file is about to or actually has expired, but by placing it on the agenda, you will extend the life for another 2 years.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll, obviously we can't even do, yeah. we don't have a quorum, but that's, yeah. We'll hold that on the desk and see who shows up.
Okay.
All right. Now, let's see. Let's go back to item number 1.
Item number 1, DWP report relative to agreements associated with the Linden Ranch Wind Project. Have staff from DWP.
Okay.
Or we should.
Do we?
Yeah. Madam Chair, also, item number 2 is a very similar type of wind agreement.
So you want to hear them
wind
together?
Power agreement. So if you'd like, you could hear both 1
Yeah,
and 2
let's do
together.
that. Okay. Great.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Randy Howard, LADWP. What we have before you is part of our RPS program, 2 additional projects. These are wind projects out of the Pacific Northwest. The first one is a 50-megawatt wind project called the Linden Ranch. It sits along the Columbia Gorge, quite a nice area for wind development. This committee has approved previously 2 agreements that were on the Oregon side of the Columbia Gorge. Both those projects are now constructed and fully operational. So what you have before you is 2 additional projects. The Linden is a little different business structure. The project is for a ownership, so it'll be a design build turnover, and it's a 50 megawatt. The other project is a 262 megawatt wind project called the Windy Point, and that project, the majority of it will be constructed by the end of December 2009, and will also serve the RPS requirements. Combined, they're about 3.5% of our RPS requirements going forward.
Can you give me some idea of the length of time it would take for the project developer to complete the project, when you anticipate the project going online and actually providing wind power?
Yes. I think if I could, I'd like to pull up a couple drawings just to kind of show you.
Fine.
The Windy Point project is sitting right in this area of the Columbia Gorge.
Tip it forward. Just tip it. No, just tip it forward so the glare is off, so I can see. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
And the Linden Ranch is right here.
Uh-huh.
As you can see, they're very close in proximity to one another. The Windy Point project is almost 80% complete in construction already.
Okay.
So it's under construction. Many of the wind towers are already up. We are starting to take the test tower on behalf of the city, so it's going to be starting to feed in the next couple of weeks already. And it's expected to be completed by December 31st, 2009. The Linden Ranch will start construction in September. We expect most of it to be completed by December of 2009, but no later than March 31st of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So both of these will be operational for our 2010 requirements.
Okay. Providing power at that time. And for the what percentage of the overall portfolio do you expect these to be providing?
The 2 projects combined should meet about 3.5% of our RPS requirements.
And then where does that put you in terms of your overall goal, cumulatively?
We have recently approved a landfill gas agreement that is starting to serve our system. With that project and the completion of the Milford Wind project that's in Utah that's under construction, we should be a little over 19%.
Okay. One other question, a couple of questions which I wanted on the project purchase, some project purchase scenarios that DWP may face as part of this agreement. Give me some idea of which scenarios would benefit the city more. We're putting 1 and 2 together.
Under the project development of the Linden Ranch, we will acquire that project as soon as it's fully constructed. So that scenario, it's a design, build, turnover without using the federal tax stimulus funds or any of the tax benefits that might be available to a wind project. Because of the financial crisis, there were not tax benefits that we felt we could secure and still keep this project on track. We will continue to look at the opportunities as it's being constructed. Under the Windy Point project, the business structure is a power purchase agreement with an option to own after 6 years. So, or in the 7th year. So what will happen is we will purchase the output of that and then have that option. It will give the developer the opportunity to then capture the tax benefits or the grant, the federal grant program, and provide those. Using that structure on Windy Point, our ratepayers should save approximately $140 million over the life of the project.
All right, I don't have any further questions on 1 or 2, so we'll do that without recommendation.
Okay. Without recommendation?
Yeah.
On both 1 and 2?
Correct.
Okay. You can also forward them as a communication from the chair.
All right, we'll do that.
Approval.
Forward 1, 2, and what about 3? We're just continuing it so it'll stay here?
That's right. So you
Okay.
can send the line.
Great, all right, so 1, 2 are communications from chair, 3 is on consent, so thank you very much. Then we'll get on to 4.
Item number 4 is motion, Perry Garcetti Gruel requesting a DWP to report on an inclusive community outreach plan for development of a solar proposal.
I can do this if the speakers would like this, and maybe this is better. I want to make sure all of the people who filled out cards get a chance to say something so that we don't have to rush at the end. So why don't I let them come up now, and then we'll have our presentation for the rest of the time. We've got 4 chairs, so I'll call 4 people at a time. Bill Corcoran, Dee Dee, come on up. Dr. Williams, and David Kirsch. Okay. Bill, and then Dee Dee, then Dr. Williams, and then David Kirsch.
Good morning, Councilwoman. It was good to see you at the Green Tech Forum yesterday, leading folks through quite a long parade of new technologies, but also very exciting to see. It is terrific to see this plan item come before here. It's been about 3 to 4 months since the intention was set to have public outreach hearings. The need for action is urgent in the city of Los Angeles, as you know, and we've been anxious to see how the city intends to roll out robust, transparent, and inclusive public workshops for the development of a solar plan that includes not only a utility-owned portion, but sets the groundwork for how we will achieve a long-term development of the city's capacity on solar power. It is really important for folks to learn that what the city can achieve with solar is more than rhetoric, that it is achievable, and that there will be a plan that includes both the utility-developed solar power, but also opportunities for private industry to be involved either through rebates and net metering or through a feed-in tariff. So we're looking for ways to ramp up quickly with solar and to reduce our impacts on surrounding areas, although some outlying development of solar will be important. The urgency is there because of the way we are burning coal. It's poisoning the earth and making people sick. So it's incumbent on us to act quickly and effectively. In addition to that, to contain costs, it's important not to just focus on the cost of solar, but also on how a solar program will be integrated with demand-side management, energy efficiency, and included in a revised, updated, and 21st century integrated resource plan for the Department of Water and Power. And I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. Dee Dee.
Good morning. My name is DD Odette. I'm from Venice. And I came here to tell you how thrilled I am with this motion that I'm looking at. Signed by Jan Perry, Eric Garcetti, and Wendy Gruel. And I'm thrilled, truly thrilled, because I believe when we all work together, we can accomplish miracles. And this city is in need of some miracles right now. And so thank you very much for bringing this front and center. And I can tell you that I will work as hard as I can to assist in any way that I am able.
Thank you. Dr. Williams. And then David.
He just mentioned coal. Coal is not in DWP's plan for at least 5 years, as of yesterday. Solar. Solar, we've had Measure B. DWP made a problem. It's now a matter that many people want solar. I've looked at solar for the last 5 years, and with DWP's regulations and such, it's never been worthwhile. Now, rates are going to go up, so maybe it will become worthwhile. However, based upon our current knowledge of what's going on within DWP, will it be job producing for everybody, or will it be selective? Such things as minimize program cost and impact to ratepayers. It sounds good, but does that include minimizing the breadth of the installers, the roofers, the panel installers? It also says interested stakeholders. There are 90 neighborhood councils. Each one of them during the Measure B problem had comments regarding what was going to go on with Measure B and how it would affect the people within our neighborhoods. As to, some of them have had training in installing solar panels. However, under Measure B and within DWP, there's an issue as to how other people will be able to install solar panels, maybe more efficiently, maybe with the most reliable technology, if we know what that is. You might say it's always been a confusing situation with DWP, and they have not really done the outreach. They don't like the neighborhood councils, and...
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch.
Yeah. Good morning. David Kirsch with the Carpenters Contractors Cooperation Committee. We are very pleased to see this item, and the carpenters look forward to participating in this process and in a more inclusive process that will involve the other construction unions in regards to the work that's being performed. But I would like to just throw one thing out there, and we kind of would like to see what's being called the solar plan is being viewed as part of a more comprehensive sort of renewable energy plan. The city is moving on different fronts in terms of renewable energy, including energy retrofit, the retrofit task force, and just in order to, I think, to make the most of this opportunity is just to see how it all fits together. It seems that, you know, there's a proposal out there to get some money from the federal government for retrofit in regards to doing some outreach in regards to figuring out how to move forward with the retrofit task force. There's discussion on Friday on a bond. It just seems like it should all be brought together and just view the solar piece as part of a comprehensive renewable energy plan. And that's sort of where we'd just like to kind of see when we have those hearings and that outreach to just kind of get a sense of the bigger picture, to take advantage of this historic opportunity. So thank you, and we're very much looking forward to participating in this process.
Thank you. Next four speakers will be Martin Schlottiger, Erica Fick, Ryan Wiggins, and Gerardo Almeida. All right, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman, Chair. Martin Schlager with the Coalition for Clean Air. Happy to be here and appreciate seeing this motion on the agenda again. It has been a long time since this motion was first raised, and I'm interested in turning the discussion about an outreach plan into action so that we can have some outreach and then implement our plan. The city and the mayor have set, in conjunction with the council here and this good committee, commendable goals that the Coalition for Clean Air supports on phasing out coal, increasing our solar power supplies, and our renewable portfolio standard. The city's come a long way in that regard, and it's time to move this toward action. I'm ready to end my comments with a minute to go so that we can have one more minute quicker to get to action from some public outreach, and let's start installing this stuff.
Thank you. Erica Fick.
Good morning, Erica Fick with Environmental Defense Fund. I'd first like to start off by saying that we appreciate your commitment to reducing harmful air pollution and global warming emissions through a transition to renewable energy. Your renewable portfolio standards are some of the highest in the nation, and the goals set by Mayor Fiordosa in the Green LA plan represent a pathway to the city's green future. The Los Angeles Solar Plan was a logical next step in accomplishing these goals. However, it's been 5 months since the failure of Measure B and 4 months since the motion for an inclusive community outreach plan for the development of a new solar proposal. It is time that the city roll out a plan for the community meetings that have been talked about since March. With this said, we ask that once this outreach plan is solidified, that the dates, times, and places of these meetings be adequately publicized so that all interested stakeholders may have an opportunity for input. It is also important that all information shared in these meetings be transparent and readily available upon request. It is essential that through these meetings we restore the faith of Angelenos in solar power as a viable source of renewable energy. It is urgent that Los Angeles begin the implementation of an aggressive solar plan, one that will help us meet our future renewable goals and greatly reduce the carbon footprint of our power supply. It is critical for Angelenos to learn that the city's clean energy goals are not just rhetoric, but that they are achievable. Thank you.
Ryan Wiggins.
Good morning, Ryan Wiggins with Endoil. Just like to thank you for having this hearing this morning, first of all, and I would like to second the comments of all of my colleagues here about the need for these meetings, and what I would like to address is the transparency issue as this goes forward. I think these meetings are a great opportunity for the department to move forward and increase its transparency, and that's going to be extremely critical with regards to solar, renewables, and getting off coal, because there is going to be opposition to solar plan and a renewable plan from people who think that the costs are going to outweigh the benefits. We need to be very, very concerted and putting out the benefits and the costs of this in a very transparent way. And so we'd like to take this opportunity to urge the department to move forward in a very open and transparent process to include all the stakeholders and get off of coal as soon as possible and have this solar plan be part of an integrated and very comprehensive plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gerardo?
Good morning. My name is Gerda Medan with Southern California District Council of Laborers. Just want to read our mission statement. Our mission and commitment to a cleaner and green workforce is geared up, and we're ready to train and partner with community groups, high school graduates, non-graduates, and at-risk youth who seek careers in renewable technology weatherization. This training will cover all facets of green construction. The laborers will train the community in the installation of photovoltaic arrays and weatherization of commercial residential buildings. Signatory contractors such as Ojai Solar, Golden State Power, ARB, and other signatory contractors are currently performing this type of work. We have an outstanding photovoltaic program which is held to the highest industry standards. This enables us to involve the community and youth and offer a good, sustainable career with excellent benefits pension plans. The City of Los Angeles, DWP, the laborers, the IBW, and other trades involved in this work has the opportunity to lead the nation and show the nation that this diverse and wonderful city of ours can put people in the community of all colors, all races, and not only people who are graduates, but people who need these jobs in the green technology. Let's go forward. Photovoltaic is a good thing. It helps clean the air. But we also would like to be partnered up with the city and bring people from the community to work who otherwise would be left out of the process. We have an open door policy with no diploma required to come into our construction trade. And not only are they going to be doing renewable technology, but they'll be doing other construction crafts that we also do, making it a sustainable career, not just a temporary, a little Band-Aid on a temporary job. We're looking for putting people in a career. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you. And I'd like to invite the staff to the table, and, okay, all right. And while, here,
Would you like to quickly run through the agenda that you have a quorum?
yeah, now that we have a quorum, Mr. Alarcon and Mr. Garcetti are here, and then why don't you sit down and we'll do you, and then have the, staff can come up too in the meantime.
That was approval on item number
We
1
went
and
one
2,
already, and then Consent is 3.
and continuance for item number 3.
Okay. Is that without objection?
Yes, on 1 and 2, I just want to say for the record, something real quick, Ken?
Yeah.
Okay. Just on 1 and 2, for the record, I know that there's consideration of an ECAF raise that's coming, and because of PPAs like this, and I would like to see when these PPAs come forward that connection made to the ECAF more often, because it hasn't necessarily been there, and I think as we're looking at that ECAF, which is going to be a 2% potentially a jump up, I think it is important for transparency and for the public to know and to see that, and to see the connection between these, and to do that more eyes wide open. So I just wanted to state that for the record, and we can talk a little bit more about it when it comes to council.
Yeah, Mary Lou Avenel.
Hi, Councilmember. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee. I'm not going to repeat the comments of my colleagues, Bill Corcoran, Martin, Erica, and Ryan, who all echoed my sentiments about the need to move forward with a plan and an implementation action as soon as possible. And I have a question, actually, as opposed to a statement, and I just wanted to ask if and when you all have established or are planning to establish a timeline for implementation on this.
No.
Okay, well, that's the answer. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to lead to success unless we're
going to talk about it.
Stick to that. I mean,
well, we have to develop a timeline. We're trying to do it collaboratively, trying to do this differently than was done before, by soliciting people's input, by hearing from the department. Let you guys go first, so you had plenty of time to talk, so I didn't have to cut you off at the end. And now we're going to have the staff report.
All right, I appreciate that, and in any way that we can help you establish a timeline and set some goals. I mean,
well, this is a first blush today. You can hear what they have to say, then you can give us your comments afterwards, and then it's going to be a collaborative process. Not going to be like before, where we're going to get input from people all over the city, through letter, through email, through testimony, on the record. We'll be taking these meetings throughout the city to make sure that people really feel like they had a chance to have some input and some comment on the record this time around, so that we can take it through a deliberative legislative process, with the end result being something that is inclusive and cost effective, with a good outreach strategy in place that people felt they had a hand in crafting.
Sure, and I appreciate transparency. Absolutely, that's important. In this motion, you're asking DWP to come back to you with a plan, and I would just argue that, when I was in school, my professors always gave me a due date for my papers and for any homework that was due. And unless you've got
they
that,
have to do today.
All right, great.
What they've done today, and then see how formulated it is, and whether it's time for us to take it on the road and to get other people's opinion. So
Great.
This is the first cut. Maybe people aren't used to actually having someone allow them the real serious opportunity to give input, and so maybe, who knows, maybe they can't, maybe they're inherently suspicious either way. But what I'm trying to do is to make sure that we don't repeat what we did before, because that failed. I'm trying to make sure that this prevails and that people really feel that they had a hand in crafting it, so we can build true consensus and have support in a very broad way.
And we appreciate that. We appreciate and want to support you in that.
Okay, great. All right, staff.
Good morning. Aaron Benjamin, Senior AGM Power System. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to address the committee and give you some background on where we are on the solar plan. Before I start, I just want to mention today in front of our board, there's a project called Nyland Solar. It's a 55 megawatt power plant that's going to be built in Salton Sea area. That's one of the largest solar plant in the country. That's going to be part of our project RPS portfolio for solar component. Madam Chair, as you know, the department has been working very diligently to put some of the framework around the solar component of our RPS, with overarching goals of having 40% renewables by 2020 and getting rid of import of coal generated energy into the city of LA and reducing 60% of our carbon footprint. Our IRP, our integrated resource plan, has been very scrutinized, very closely scrutinized, in order for us to make sure that as we meet these goals, that the very high-level principles of our power system are met. First is the reliability of power source. So as we bring these renewables and the new technology into the system, we want to make sure that not only we're getting renewables, but we're getting the right renewables at the right amounts in order for us to integrate it into the system, so we have a robust power system that's reliable. The second component of it is, as we meet these goals, we want to make sure that we are getting it for the best value for our ratepayers, and we are getting the right economics that's working for us to make sure our rates are taken care of. And as we meet these goals, we want to make sure that we are aggressively pursuing job creation and economic growth into the city of LA, and make sure that this is an all-inclusive effort for us to make sure that this is a plan that we have the backing of the entire ratepayer base and the citizens of LA. So as we move forward into developing the framework to put the solar program in place, the 5 components that we've talked about, are the utility-owned solar. Again, that component has been part of our integrated resource plan as a tool for us to make sure that our stressed distribution system, cables and assets that we have in place are taken care of without putting additional resources to bring in transmission projects in place, to bring power in. We have a vast amount of potential for us to build solar within the city of Los Angeles, and we want to make sure that we tap into that resource in order for us to reduce the peak demands and to make sure we reduce the stress on our system and make sure, the reliability increases as we add these additional resources. The second part of the solar plan is our concentrated solar, large-scale solar that we want to incorporate in our system. These types of technologies allow us to shift the production of solar power in order for us to meet the peaks in the city. Our peak at the city occurs around between 5 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a low on the generation side on the solar. Having concentrated solar in place, it's going to allow us to shift the generation in order for us to meet those peaks. And again, this is all bringing it back to our integrated resource plan to make sure the amount of solar that we have in our portfolio matches our...
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The motion calls for a report to the Energy
On
and
the outreach.
Environmental
outreach.
30 days on an inclusive community outreach
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little context to it.
I don't think the general public has any clue what you're talking about. They're either for solar or against it, but we have not sold them.
Yes.
So that's what I'm more interested in, is consistent with the motion.
I just wanted to frame the discussion points that we want to go forward with.
Frame it around that, we'll lose
Why don't we
again.
just do this? Why don't we...
We'll lose it again.
That's fine.
Well, we're not going to put it back on the ballot. We're going to take it through a legislative process.
Still have to sell it to the public.
We do
No,
have...
we are, okay, we are. That's what we're trying to do. This is the first meeting today on that. Okay, that's fine. Would you
We can go
ahead and
into
just-
the outreach program and give you...
No, just talk about the community outreach then.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Joe Romalo, Director of Public Affairs at LADWP. We've put together a proposal for, and have discussed, I know, with your staff and some others, for 5 regional meetings throughout the city. We are also open to expanding that number if you see fit. We'll be discussing this proposal with our board later today, and I'll just walk you through the main components of it. Again, 5 regional meetings hosted by our board, could also be hosted with a group of council members, or just done obviously in coordination with your offices. We've spoken about possibly hosting the first in South LA in your district in conjunction with other council offices. These would take place in areas such as South LA, Harbor, East Side, West Side, and the Valley. We're open again to adding a 6th meeting if need be, or others as requested. We would propose that these take place in September. As you know, August is a really bad month for outreach. We're coming to you now and again taking it to our board. So we would propose to do this right after back to school, begin these in September and conclude them in September. Hold the regional meetings throughout the city and do so with professional facilitators. We have the framework of a plan that we obviously want public input on, and we welcome that public input. We have individuals who've been identified through AECOM and a group called EDAW who can help with the professional facilitation of those meetings. The framework of the meeting would essentially be an overview of the plan with the whole group, followed by individual facilitated breakout groups on the various components of the plan. The basic components of the plan that have been set forth that Mr. Benjamin was referencing include the utility installed and large-scale power purchase agreements like concentrated solar, the feed-in tariff program, and customer programs that we currently are offering, as well as sun shares, which allow people to buy a virtual share.
So just to review, you'd have an overall presentation to the group, then you have breakout groups based on the category?
Yeah, what we'd probably do is break up the 5 different components into 3 and repeat those breakout groups
So they can run a
twice,
circuit.
so that people could go to 2 of the 3, and then if they wanted to go a third, they could go to another meeting.
And there would be facilitators in each one?
Exactly. There'd be a professional staff resource available to answer factual questions, but the professional facilitator really taking input and comments. What questions do you have? What concerns do you have? What do you want to hear from the department? What do you want the city to know about your thoughts about the program?
And then in the breakout sessions, how would you actually gather input from the public? Would that be in written form
Yeah.
or? Okay.
Yes, this would be, we'd have individual scribes for every group who would record all of the comments that are made, much like environmental outreach community meetings are done. That's why we're actually using an environmental outreach specialist to assist with the facilitation role at these meetings. We think it's important that people not feel it's DWP who's just taking down these notes and then doing something with it. We have facilitators who are professionally trained that can do this to help, record. We'll have staff assisting with recording that information, a record that can then be forwarded for legislative purposes, both to our board, to the council, to the mayor, that reflects the public input that's been received. And then you can then take that and make decisions based upon it.
Now, as you go through each community meeting, is there a component in your strategy to then put the whole group back together at the end and give them an overview of what happened?
That's something we certainly could do.
Now, talk to the committee about what your strategy is for pulling in stakeholders and
Sure.
what you intend to do that in that regard.
Sure.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
If we plan on doing this without going to the voters, why do we go to the voters in the first place?
I honestly am not probably the person to answer that question, sir.
Who would be?
I don't even recall off the top of my head the process that was followed to put it on the ballot. I think that was a action ultimately by council, and I'm not the person.
Well, you don't think when you go to the community outreach that that's the first question people are going to ask?
And I understand that, and one of the things is we don't want to turn these meetings into a question and answer, really.
So you're not going to take questions?
No, it's not there we're not wanting to debate people in these meetings, we're wanting to hear them.
How about right here in this committee with a councilman asking you a question? Can I get an answer?
What's the question?
Why did we go to the ballot in the first place if we're just going to cram this down the throats anyway?
So all I can tell you right now is that we are open. We want public feedback at these meetings.
But you're not answering my question.
Their concerns.
Well, I can answer your question. We voted on it as a council.
But why did we go if you know, I voted for it. I voted for it myself, but nobody, I voted for it myself, but nobody told me that we could do it anyway.
Yeah, they did.
No, they did not tell me that. Don't tell me what people told me, Jan. People did not tell me we could do this anyway.
We had a choice, and we chose to put it on the ballot. That failed, and this is why we're doing it this way now, and we're not cramming anything down.
Well, I think we are. Why can't we just do it? If we had to go to the ballot in the first place, I don't understand why we can't do that the same, or...
Well, I don't,
understand why we did
it
it
failed,
that way.
so I personally would rather do it this way and do a lot of community outreach and see if we can build consensus.
He doesn't want to take questions and answers?
I think he's answering
No,
the questions to the best of his
He
ability.
said he didn't want to turn it into a question and answer period.
We expect to hear concerns, to record it, to take information from the public, to hear their questions, and to bring back and hopefully publish in one consistent way answers to many of those concerns that have been raised so that our board and the council can ultimately make a public,
I
an
think we got
informed
quite a
decision.
bit of input on
There's-
election day.
I understand that, and that's why we're here today talking about how we go about beginning an outreach on this issue. We don't want this to be an open-ended 3-4 months without end. We're proposing that it begin in
Look,
September
if we know who the
and end in
constituencies
September.
are that shot this down, we need to cut a deal with them. That's the bottom line.
Well, I don't agree with that. I'm sorry.
I'm not asking anybody to agree. I'm expressing my opinion.
Okay. Okay. Go
So,
ahead.
we think it's important that these meetings, all of them, be open to everyone to attend. We don't want to segment in groups and go and only listen to them. They'll feel, in some ways, people will feel they're the only ones who feel that way about an item. It's important to have all together in large groups. We're going to publicize these meetings, including through paid advertisement, through earned media. We have over 500 followers at LADWP on Twitter that we'll put out there. Many of those are solar followers and people interested in the topic. We will go directly to self-identified groups. There were many who were identified during the Measure B campaign. We expect to invite them, to welcome them, to listen and hear their concerns. Many who were for it and many who were against it. And we also plan on involving neighborhood councils, homeowners associations, and working with your offices in conjunction with each of the sponsored meetings to identify additional groups that you'd like us to reach out to. We'll have fact sheets, print ads, that type of material. Very straightforward outreach. This is something that is not new. It's something that, though, we feel must and should be done.
Okay. Anything else? Did you want to go back to finish what you
No,
started?
I think,
No?
unless you have specific questions on any of those components.
Okay. Mr. Cardenas is here, so we have a full complement. Mr. Okay, thank you. Given the solar plan that we are beginning to develop, what is your overall goal and objective in terms of the parameter of this new piece as compared to before, and how does it fit in with the overall renewable plan?
I can answer that. With the 40% renewable goal that we have for 2020, again, these numbers are not hard and fast, based on the system stability and the integration that we can do. We are looking at about 1,200 plus megawatts of solar integrated in our system to reach the goal of the 40% renewable by 2020. Which includes the other technologies, the winds, the geothermal, the biomass, and many other technologies that we need to see how those develop, and then we can scale back or we can accelerate some of these components. Solar as a technology it's much easier to integrate in our systems, and we see that as a great resource for us to build that 40%.
Now, once we come back with a draft plan, and the 5 meetings are just the first round, if that is what we determine to be appropriate, and a draft plan is developed based on community input and what we have done to date, then what steps do you anticipate to follow, and how do you intend to incorporate council and mayoral review on the input of the draft plan?
We do expect to formalize the public comment that was received. The department, of course, would respond to various issues that have been raised in a formal report. I believe, and I'm not the person to speak to this specifically, and perhaps Mr. Benjamin can help. I believe that would then be forwarded to our board for review, and beyond that, I don't know. I believe council would have a role as it saw fit to oversee that, to review it, to also consider that input. As you know, many of these items ultimately are going to come to the council for approval in one form or another, whether it's through individual projects or individual program components or formal changes to various programs that require ordinance changes. So I think it makes a great deal of sense to have a formal review and approval by our board and certainly then reviewed by council of the final report.
Yeah, I think objectively it'll help to build consensus to make sure that it's not a lopsided approval process and review process like it was to some extent before. And moving forward, I think we can build a broader consensus this time without having to go on the ballot ultimately.
And Madam Chair, I mean, the process that we're going to go through as we identify the details on these projects, the budgeting process is going to be revised in order for us to incorporate all those programs and the timing of the schedules, and then it will get approved by our board and then ultimately by the council.
Okay, Mr. Garcetti and Mr. Cardenas.
What do you think the most successful cities in the U.S. or globally have been or utilities in terms of solar?
As successful programs.
Who would you point to as good models?
Several of the utilities. I mean, if I had to pick, I mean, not one city has all the components of it, but if we pick the best practices in different cities, I think a lot of them have a similar components that we are trying to move forward, which has the component as a utility. We're looking at it from a power system point of view as an integration into our resource mix, plus the private entity coming in with feed-in tariffs, plus the consumers.
I understand that mix, and I'm personally supportive of it and always have been. And so there's, I mean, to your point, Mr. Alacon, before about cutting deals and for all segments, I think this committee at least has been on the record the entire time, whether going to the ballot on the public piece or not, that there was a private piece, that there's a residential piece, that there's an in-basin piece, and that there's an out-of-basin piece. And that certainly as a policymaker, I will restate every single time, because my friends who are on both sides of the issue, and there are some out there who are hostile to solar, but both sides of Measure B, people were like, we like solar, we like solar, we like solar, vote for it, don't vote for this one. So it was nice to have a consensus, as I've said, after 6 or 7 years of people not necessarily always saying they're for solar, that we've achieved that. But, you know, in terms of, I'm not concentrating as much on that mix, which I think we do have buy-in, hopefully in this entire room, and certainly among policymakers, to do each aspect, that it's not just going to be publicly owned, it's not just going to be privately bought, and it's not going to be just publicly participated as well in terms of people's homes or businesses. But which cities or countries have been most successful in actually getting the solar up? And I ask that because, not so I can say, well, look, San Diego's beating us, or Australia's doing a great job, or Germany, but we want to look at the methods of how they got that up and learn those lessons of where some have done a better job with the public side, some have done better with the private feed-in tariff side. So maybe we could hear, and if you don't have that, that would seem to be a very important starting point for us to have that conversation.
Yeah, maybe Randy can.
Councilman Randy Howard, LA2WP. We've spent quite a bit of time looking at various programs being offered by different cities, trying to find the best models that might work. We have some consultants that have helped us kind of frame that. And I'd say from a city, similar utility type framework, SMUD certainly offers, up in Sacramento, offers one of the foremost programs in solar. LA and SMUD continuously compete for one of the best programs. I think from a country perspective, Spain and Germany certainly have offered us models to look at to determine how you get a lot of solar installed. But they've had a lot of difficulties there, a lot of hiccups in their program, and we've been able to learn from that. And I think we've tried to incorporate that in how we're approaching it in just the broad spectrum between, you know, the large utility systems out in the desert versus in the city, and how we're approaching the mix of our program. But we continue to look at those successes. We meet with a lot of the developers that have built some of those programs, as well as the individuals from those utilities.
For me, and I know today is not the debate or statement of principles time, but just very briefly, on the private side, we're not looking to subsidize business. We're looking to do something fair. And that's, I think, very important principle for our ratepayers, that we not, there are some folks who say, vote no on Measure B, we should have the private marketplace, but I've seen some cities do feed-in tariffs that are pegged too high, and it's essentially a public gift of funds or a public overpayment, and that's not good for the ratepayer. The positive side about the public-owned and operated stuff is that we've owned and operated most of our power production, and that has been a good thing for our ratepayers, which is what I often said to folks who were opposed to Measure B. We have to do both. The popular participation is never the best financial option, but it's a very important one because a lot of people want solar on their homes. And it's a different context, but Australia right now has a very interesting moment, and it's too bad that we weren't quicker on the draw about this, because with the economic downturn and overproduction, there's a glut of solar panels on the market for very cheap price right now at that residential level. And Australia had a subsidy program where basically people can sign up for free and get solar on their home. It's a very small amount of solar. It's not going to produce 80%, but it produces 5 or 10% of their needs. They're able to buy in enough bulk to get those very cheap solar panels right now, photovoltaic cells, and also a small subsidy from the federal government allowed them to basically be free for whoever wanted to sign up. That market will close and go back to a place where the costs, I think, will probably be driven up even while overall prices go down the long term. But that's why some of this is important to be doing more quickly. We introduced this motion, it said 30 days, and this is, I don't know, 90 days later, something like that, 120 days later. That said, I appreciate the approach, and I think it'll be a good approach. Having professional facilitators doing that will allow folks to have a lot of input. And there's people who have ideas out of left field and right field, and some of them are great, and some of them are completely nutty. They come from council members as well as the public, so I don't hold myself immune from that. But I think it's going to be really important to have that conversation and to do it with as many people. And I think council members, it is incumbent upon us to really deploy a lot of people to those meetings. Bill Rosenthal's recent meeting on this in one of his communities was a very good example of how he had close to 100 people who really had done research ahead of time on both water, and they'd done some solar stuff before, and added a lot of value as opposed to just showing up and saying, well, teach me about solar. And I hope that we can provide maybe a resource center for people who want to follow up in the research, a place where they can go and start doing their own self-study. Because there's one thing I noticed in Measure B is there's a ton of misinformation, because it takes years to learn some of this stuff. But if we can consolidate that in one place, I think it will be a helpful resource, not skewed one way or the other. Put people who are critical of solar, people who say it should be residential, people should be feed-in tariffs, et cetera. Put that all in a place where people can kind of do their own research, and I think that will be helpful too.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. So you're going to have informational meetings throughout the city? Yes. Okay. Well, there's a really nice facility in the community of Van Nuys, very accessible by public transportation and the sort, so that'd be a good place for you to have one. Happens to be in my district. I'd be more than happy to help out and cooperate with the outreach and make sure that all the council members from the valley are aware and we all get a chance to participate as well.
Well, no, there needs to be 2 in the valley.
Yeah, I actually think there needs to be 2 in the valley. Yeah.
That's why I said 5 or 6.
And we should probably, maybe Mr. Alarcon can suggest a location like where you got sworn in. That was a good one.
And the location you mentioned, we've checked their availability, and they're our top choice. We plan on holding that meeting there. Excellent. And I certainly wasn't saying that should be the only one in the valley. Right. Just make that clear. Now, these informational meetings, I mean, how honest and realistic are they going to be about the politics surrounding what it takes to get this kind of initiative, not only buy-in from the community, but buy-in from the powerful stakeholders, such as the ones who backed or didn't back the last initiative that failed in March of this year? I mean, are you going to talk about the politics of having the projects and or facilities or equipment owned by the Department of Water and Power and what comes with that? Are you going to talk about what the costs are of solar power when it comes to per kilowatt versus what the blended rate we have today, so that people understand that it's going to cost more? But in my opinion, by no means is the cost a deterrent for us to do the right thing and reduce the carbon footprint, which that is priceless, in my opinion. Are those kinds of dialogues going to happen, or are we just going to talk about the simple mechanics like we're talking to third graders and trying to explain to them such an intricate, politically charged situation?
No, I think, we often get accused of overcomplicating things in public meetings and giving too much detail, and there's certainly an appropriate way to find that middle ground between oversimplification and just completely confusing folks. I think there are obvious issues that need to be addressed. The way we will set it up is with a general session, obviously the appropriate welcoming remarks, but a good, 30-minute presentation on what the framework looks like, the 5 elements of the framework, and various issues about each of those. that we know and that in many cases we have answers to, or we have a plan for, or a proposed plan for. And then to break out into smaller groups, have a brief presentation by a subject matter expert to talk about that issue a little bit more fully, to kind of frame the discussion in a smaller group, and then to take that input, to hear what those questions are. In some cases, there might be answers on the spot. In other cases, we may have to get more information. But I think everything's on the table, and we want everyone to come and participate and know that their voice will be heard.
For example, one of the things that was being sold to the community, that the last initiative that was on the ballot was about jobs as well as energy. Yet we had certain labor components right here in the basin who normally get along with each other and arm in arm on opposite sides of the issue. How did that happen? Why did that happen? How are we going to prevent that from happening in the future? Those kinds of discussions need to happen as well, because that's the reality of having initiatives. If you have an initiative and nobody really opposes it or puts much money against it, you're probably going to get across the finish line and get it done. But if you have an initiative and powerful interests are on both sides, then it's usually a coin toss as to who's going to prevail at the end of the day. And while all of those kinds of things could happen, if we could prevent that from happening, if at all possible, then I think we're going to have something, the results that we all would like, which is reducing our carbon footprint at the end of the day. Because that's really what this is about. Also, I wanted to find out if the department is going to be forthright about explaining the responsibilities that the department has, and that reliability falls on the shoulders of the department. Reliability does not fall on the shoulders of that particular homeowner that has some solar on top of their roof. Because if it's a cloudy day, or if they're using more consumption that they're producing, then guess who kicks in? The Department of Water and Power kicks in. But then again, you have energy that's going down the line and on the grid that if it doesn't get used, it dissipates, it disappears. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of the public doesn't understand about electricity. Correct me if I'm wrong. When it comes to water, you can hold on to it. And you open the valve and close the valve, and then it sits there until it's ready to be used. But when you produce energy, it goes down the line, and if it doesn't get used up, it dissipates. It doesn't just sit in a reservoir somewhere waiting for it to be used. So the person who produces that energy, if you produce that energy at X amount per kilowatt, and it doesn't get used, who eats that? Now, the last part was a question. Who eats that energy that didn't get used?
I think, Council Member, you touched on the reliability issue, and I opened it up, my statement, by saying that's the most important thing, is to have the right energy mix at the right time where reliability is not compromised. So if generation, utility old generation, that's why it's very important for us to make sure that this is just another generation facility for us where we operate and maintain to make sure the quality and the sustainability of that power plant is maintained properly, so we're not compromising that. And if your question about the dissipation of the energy, if it's on our owned and operated, we have to have integration issues built into our system to make sure that we have like 1 hour ahead forecasts to make sure that we bring capacity up to make sure we pick up that and reduce the energy generation.
But right now, and I'll try to be quick, Madam Chair, but right now, what you have is more of a one-dimensional system than the system that we're describing here. When you look at as you broke it down, the three-component mix, residential consumer, residential customer solar programs, we anticipate by 2020 we have 380 megawatts. DWP-owned solar projects within the city, within the basin, 400 megawatts by 2014, and large-scale solar projects located outside the city, perhaps 500 megawatts by 2020. My point is, that is a much more complicated system than the somewhat one-dimensional system we have right now. When I call it a one-dimensional system, what I mean is the main producer of 90+% of the power the Department of Water and Power is working with is produced by the Department of Water and Power today, correct?
Right.
But if we're going to be talking about changing that mix, then it's not a one-dimensional system anymore. And I'll be darned if politically it's possible for the Department of Water and Power to go ahead and pass on some of those lost costs to a residential user who has
a grid on the roof. It's just not going to happen. So at the end of the day, the Department of Water and Power is going to have to learn how to eat those costs, whatever those variables happen to be on a given hour, a given day, in a given month, in a given year. But at the end of that day, that month, that year, the Department of Water and Power doesn't eat it either. It goes back into the rates for the customers.
For recovery.
Across the board. It's blended across the board, correct?
All right.
So I think it's important that in these community meetings that you have an honest discussion about what it is to be responsible as a Department of Water and Power, like yourselves. What that responsibility entails, because a lot of that responsibility will never be borne on the individual user. It's just not going to happen. Politically, it's just not going to happen. I don't think you have enough politicians who are going to let that happen. So the bottom line is you're going to have to realize that I think it's important that you have an honest discussion with all of the stakeholders and people who come to these meetings to let them know that we're going from a simple system, top down one way, to a system where energy is being produced in various ways, and there's going to be benefit to the person who produces it for themselves. And then people are talking about, well, what happens if it's a real sunny day and I'm producing more energy? Say I'm on vacation and I'm not using energy in the house, so I should be able to feed the grid back. So you got to go ahead and accept that if you have that agreement. But what if you don't need it?
And we
You're
have,
going to have to accept it anyway, and you're going to have to buy it back from them. You're going to have to credit that particular producer, small producer as they are. You're going to have to credit that producer, and at the end of the day, if we're eating energy, in other words, we're dissipating energy that doesn't get used, the Department of Water and Power is the one that's going to have to put that back into their rate, pass that cost on to the customers.
and that's why we have to make sure our systems are capable of backing down in a very quickly and ramping up quickly.
Exactly.
So we can maximize those, like you said, this is a different era than putting a power plant on and keeping it on for 365 days. So we have to be ready to accept those things, and I think you brought up the issues of where we're going to discuss in the feed-in tariffs of how that happens, where we give priority to renewable energy and we back down our gas-fired and other fossil fuels, so make sure we maximize but that balance is very important for a utility to be in the center of this. We cannot tell the end users, you figure out how you're going to integrate it. It's our responsibility and it's going to be on our shoulder. So that's why it's very important to keep these balanced approaches, so make sure we're not compromising anything at the city under reliability's watch.
Because reliability is not going to be on anybody but the department.
Right.
And reliability costs money, correct?
Exactly.
It
And
costs infrastructure, men and women power, brain power, all those kinds of things to make sure that it's done right. And when it's not done right, is there a potential for a great loss?
right. And
That's the question.
it
Is
is.
there a
it is-
potential for a great
it's a
loss
great-
if that's not done right?
If it's not done right, you have a potential to bring the system down, not just that power plant. But again, I think your point, Council Member, is we have to do a better job in explaining all these intricacies that really we cannot delegate this to other people to do, and we have to be in the center of this thing.
Exactly. That's not a popular conversation, and I can guarantee you this, by and large, the vast majority of politicians don't want to hear it, and they're not going to want to be part of making that explanation, because it's bad news. It's not fun, it's not pretty, it's not cute, and it certainly isn't something that people want to hear.
Exactly. It's as absurd as me inviting people to run the power plants that we have right now. We just can't delegate that to, and we have to be doing it right. And I think we have the capacity and the capability to do it right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me have Ms. Garcia come on up, because she came in late, and speak, and then did you want to add some more?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
All right, well.
With regard to
Go ahead.
the renewable portfolio standards, is this the only way to achieve it?
No.
Okay, then why are we taking this approach versus other approaches?
Because the mix of renewables has to be very well balanced to make sure it matches our system. Every utility has different profile. Solar, for us, it's very important because of our condensed metropolitan area, and that gives us more value rather than a utility that has a vast area to serve, that might be better served by wind or anything. Right now, you saw 2 wind projects that are coming online, and I think we're hitting a saturation point as far as how much we can absorb into our system, and that's going to kind of limit us from going into that technology. We have to explore solar we have to explore biomass and geothermal in order for us to complete the 40%. And that mix, like I said, it's not an exact science, because at the end of the day, we have to make sure, we balance all these components so the system is robust.
This is a major investment in one element of the potential ways to achieve a renewable energy portfolio that can be sustained. Why should we bankroll such a large portion of our minimal resources for a project that could take away from efforts from developing other forms of...
Let me give you the idea of diversifying the energy sources is an important policy cornerstone for us. So we want to diversify the fuel sources and also diversify our generation points. The difference between the solar, it's a very simple, low-risk installation, even though the initial cost might be higher than others. But on a long-term basis, you're buying stability, you're buying low maintenance, and you're buying a very simple installation which could create a lot of jobs in our city.
We could meet all the quality factors that Mr. Cardenas raised.
It's...
So you're saying that we're, notwithstanding a major investment into this solar approach, we are not ignoring other sources of renewable energy?
No.
Let me express that my concern, expressed in my earlier comments, is relative to my belief that the vote of the public was not a vote against solar, and was not a vote that emanated from bad organizing. It emanated from a fundamental distrust that the public has of DWP. And any, it's sort of like the opponents who put some resources behind the countermeasure, or just to oppose this measure. It was like tipping cows.
Right.
All they have to do is say DWP is doing it, don't trust them, and that was enough. I don't see what's going to stop them from doing the exact same thing at the community meetings. In fact, it'll be a lot cheaper to send a small group of people to each of these meetings and mow the process. So you haven't changed anything. You haven't changed anything in terms of the dynamic that would reduce that kind of counteraction. And that's why I'm concerned that we're just creating a primrose path for us to go down and get slammed at the end of the day because the public fundamentally doesn't trust DWP, and there are communities of interest very much concerned about getting their fair share of this massive investment, who can tip the cow. You're not addressing my concerns at all. I'm a politician. I know how strategies work, and I know how to undermine, and I know how to create acceptance. And for 16 years I've been watching this process, political process. This is a political process. You are not addressing my concerns that the general public at the end of the day is still going to fundamentally distrust DWP, get angry that that the measure was placed before them. And with all due respect to my chairperson, this thing was put on the council within a matter of weeks. We had to make a decision. And we did not have the full benefit of the kind of community input that we normally go through. And so I'm not convinced in your outreach strategy in terms of presenting a message to the general public that will be embraced at the end of the day, which if they do not embrace it, it could undermine the purpose of the project. If they will not put the solar panels on their roofs, we've undermined our whole effort. So I think, don't ignore my comments. You could think you're talking fancy, but let me tell you, I know my public. And I know that it could undermine other efforts if it doesn't undermine this one. So just because this will get pushed through doesn't mean that you win.
Let us work with you, as we will with other members of the council, to hear what you'd like to see us present that can help win that support. We would like to work to hear the specifics.
Well, I think I said it. Bring in the communities of interest that shot this down in the first place and put them at the table.
And I think that's what we're hoping to do in these meetings.
I hope so. I don't know.
Okay. We heard your comments, Councilmember, and we need to do a better job to bring that. But I want to take an exception to what you said. I mean, from my personal view, the department has done well over 100 years bringing power to the city of LA. We have hardworking men and women that put their heart into this and do it.
Don't patronize. Look, I've been here longer than you.
I know.
I've been with the city of Los Angeles longer than you. I love this department more than you. I fought for this department more than you. Don't patronize me. What I am saying is the public does not trust DWP. That's wholly different than what you were saying.
And we have to do a better job, and we're going to reach out. And your comments are all well taken.
Thank you. We need to let Ms. Garcia come up and have a chance to talk. It starts at 10. Yeah, it does. And they're trying to make a quorum downstairs. So I want to give you a chance to talk.
Thank you. It will be short. I won't take long.
You can take your 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. We support, that is the DWP MOU Oversight Committee supports the motion that was made both by your committee, the Education Neighborhood Council, and this committee, in that you are asking a very simple question. How are you including the neighborhood councils and the interested stakeholders? I have not seen to this date any of that really put into action. We've asked, and we've volunteered our services, but it's not forthcoming. The Measure B, as you know, was out there because it was for inclusionary purposes, that everyone be included in the participation, and most importantly, the very fact that we needed to have prior notification of what is coming. You don't give a neighborhood council, anyone, 2 days' notice with just a Saturday and Sunday to respond on a Monday. It's not fair. You're not going to get much. We did yesterday, by virtue of the electronics, I received 47 neighborhood councils from the MOU who said that this was not a proper way of doing it. Coming to specifically to the solar, no one has seen a solar program, a solar plan, and we would like to be included, not after the fact, but during the formative stages. When you present something at the end, you are simply doing an outreach of what someone else has done. If you do it behind closed doors, and you have the chief of staffs and you have selected people meeting on what a solar plan should be, you're not including the very people who put it together, which was the DWP MOU Oversight Committee. What are you doing, and what is the council doing to ensure that we are being included? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. There will not be a vote on this item today. I have one question to the department, and want to make a suggestion and see if you think you can do this. Come back. When's our next meeting?
The first week of September, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Let's clear out the agenda and make this the only item on there. I want you to come back with the template for the meetings, the tentative timeline, some tentative locations that you have targeted, and then in each case, the list of stakeholders that you intend to reach out to in the geographic areas. And what I would suggest to you is that you start as a focus group by interviewing the council members, each member of this committee, to get their input prior to that meeting, so you can come back and you will have incorporated their suggestions into your plan. And then let's just do a dry run of what a presentation would look like, so that we can give you some input and some comments and some direction. And then we can start rolling it out.
I'm happy to do that. However, in order for us to do meetings even middle of September, we need to have, would help to have conceptual agreement on 5 meetings and to allow us to go ahead and set those locations so that we can begin advertising.
I don't have a problem with you setting the locations. That's not a problem. I realize you have to.
And the dates as well.
Yeah, I just want you to come back with the tentative dates and the timeline so we can start putting it out there for consumption by the public. But what I'm asking you to do is to come back and do basically a dress rehearsal, and we'll make that the only item on the agenda. And that should give you some time to talk to Mr. Alarcon, talk to Mr. Cardenas, to Mr. Garcetti. It'll be after the 31st. But why don't you interview them before the change takes place, and then get their input so that we can start giving some meat on the bones of the draft so that they know what a meeting is going to look like, what information will be presented. Then, you'll have opportunity to talk about having materials translated, obviously having translators on site. You'll have a sense of which venues you're going to commit and reserve, all those things. So we can have a little mini presentation to show it off to the public and then get their input and comment. Okay? Yep. All right, that'll close that one off. Next we have time for public comment for those items that are not on the agenda. And our only person to comment today is Dr. Williams. Is he still here? Okay, Dr. Williams has left? Yes. Okay. All right, well, with that, the meeting is adjourned.